Many people reestablishing relationships, happy to see one another. As we take our seats, Madam Clerk, would you kindly call the roll?
Ms. Carano. Mr. Kerrigan. Mr. Curtis. Mr. Dortch. Mr. Farahi. Mr. Finland. Mr. Flynn. Mr. Hall. Mr. Hawkins. Mr. Humke.
Here.
Mr. Sullivan. Ms. Weber. Ms. Zadra.
Thank you very much. I believe I was told that Mr. Kerrigan and Mr. Dortch have excused absences. Please let them show as excused. Let us now call for the Pledge of Allegiance. May we have Mr. Curtis, would you lead us in that? Thank you very much. Well done. That would take us to approval of the agenda. Does anyone have any changes, additions, deletions? There's a motion to approve and a second. Is there any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. That takes us to initial public comment. Madam Clerk, do you have any request to speak cards? Does any person wish to give public comment who is here today? We see none, so we will close public comment. Oh, I'm sorry, I reversed these. Approval of the agenda. I guess I went for the minutes.
Second.
There's a motion to approve and a second. Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. And that would take us to updates and reports. Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and happy 2014 to everybody. We've hit the ground running here and just returned from the Professional Convention Management Association annual meeting in Boston, which is really the first big event of the new year when it comes to our number one priority, which is meetings and conventions. Through my President's report, I made a couple of observations that I thought were salient because they really ring home how easy it is to do things wrong. And Boston has a great reputation, and we're all looking forward to going there, but they really dropped the ball in this conference. When you consider over 4,000 meeting professionals were in attendance, what a missed opportunity it was for them to position themselves. I'm pleased to say that when we've had an opportunity, albeit on a slightly smaller scale, with a number of very important VIP groups from the same industry recently, we've really stood tall and done an outstanding job that people are still talking about. So much so that when we were at PCMA, people were talking about how lousy a job Boston had done, but a number of people were also saying to us, boy, you guys really hit out of the park with the Trade Show News Network when they were out there, or the the ASAE Next Gen Conference really was spectacular. So it's kind of interesting. There are a lot of convention cities we go to on a regular basis, and we have a chance to really see them year in, year out, doing well or not doing so well. And what we find is that some of them really do call it in. They really don't treat each individual group as if it's special. And I think that going forward continues to be one of our real special secret weapons here in Northern Nevada. The customers we have and retain and come back here year after year really do notice the difference in the feel here and the way we give them attention. And it's important we never forget that, because as a smaller market, if we don't do a better job than the big markets, then you might as well just go to the big ones. There's no real difference. One of the other things that really came to play was years ago, you sent your sales team off to a convention, and they sort of scrambled and arrived at the convention and did their best to talk to people at receptions and cocktail parties, etc. But now you really need to plan in advance and have customer-centric events that have a very strong appeal to them. And I do give our sales team a lot of credit, Audrey and John, for coming up with a great one. We managed to snag one of the very few suites at the Celtics game that took place on the open evening of this convention, and we're able to get a really strong lineup of customers to attend with us Many were saying how they've always wanted to go to a Celtics game and see the parquet floor. One of the gentlemen there said this was on his bucket list and he can now cross it off, and was greatly appreciative of Reno Tahoe making it possible. So that was a really, really terrific event for us, and one that many destinations much larger than Reno Tahoe could not match in terms of appeal and desirability. We also made sure that in the morning, early before the sessions got going, we invited customers to breakfast so we could have one-on-one time with them during the conference to cement relationships and hopefully close some business. And we had some very good ones. I attended several of those with our sales team, and I think the easy way out is to sleep in and go to the general session at the very last second. The tougher way is to have the 7 a.m. breakfast with customers, and I can assure you that that is something we do on a consistent basis, and it is another way we can keep getting closer to our goals. And just one final observation from this first convention of the new year. It was very rewarding to have people come up to us and make comments about, gee, I'm hearing a lot about Reno Tahoe these days. A number of comments about our ad campaign, which continues to draw a lot of attention in the meeting and convention marketplace. And when you look at the resources of destinations like Orlando and Chicago, and the number of people they have, the size of their product, their marketing dollars, you look at the companies that are so prominent at these, the Marriotts and the Starwoods of the world, and the dollars they have available to them, for a destination like Reno Tahoe to be acknowledged without prompting by so many different people shows to me that we are definitely on the right track in terms of generating the kind of awareness we probably should have had years ago, but are now fortunate to be enjoying. One of the other things that we've done in the sales arena that's brand new, we've always obviously told our salespeople you need to prospect. We need to put more things in the pipeline to make sure that you've got a bigger number of groups to try to convert to definite business here. Salespeople are busy. A lot of them have new accounts or new territories, and that takes a lot of extra work. So it's just human nature that very often prospecting, which tends not to be the most popular thing for salespeople on their daily lineup, tends to get pushed off a little bit. And before you know it, we're closing business, but we're not replacing it with new tentatives that provide the opportunity for us going forward. So what John came up with and I fully support is weekly prospecting meetings with the team where everybody in front of their peers and John and myself tells us what their prospecting schedule was the week before. Specifically goes through the accounts that they researched and went after and what the results were. We feel that this kind of structured approach is necessary. We need to get our pipeline up to bigger numbers so that we have more to convert. And we're only a couple of weeks into this, but by taking something that was done on faith and making it part of their to-do list that they must do every week or risk the embarrassment in front of their peers, we think is going to be a helpful step to getting more and more opportunities. And in a couple of minutes, I'll share with you some of the new business that's been developed recently, because we are making significant progress in bringing new business to this destination, not just rebooking old accounts that have been here previously. A lot of forecasts are coming out now for 2014. Virtually every day I get new ones emailed to me from various trade and professional associations and industry organizations and research companies. And what we're seeing is a pretty strong agreement that business travelers will be out in force this year. That picked up dramatically last year, and it looks to continue this year. So the corporations of the world are doing a bit better, and they realize their salespeople and their regional managers have got to go out for some face-to-face interaction to keep that momentum going and grow it to the next level. We also see indications that tourism, both international and domestic, will continue. People are feeling a little bit more comfortable with their finances and the economy in general, and are starting to take that 3-day weekend or that vacation they haven't taken for the last couple of years. So that's positive news. The one that's a bit of a question mark is meeting attendance, and there are a number of factors there. One factor is the continued confusion over government meetings, and not just government meetings that are held by the government, but government attendance at meetings that are held by the private sector. The new $1.1 trillion budget that passed had some new restrictions in how much money can be spent on meetings and conference attendance, and how much money you can spend before you have to get approval at a higher level, et cetera. So the 50,000 room nights we used to enjoy from government meetings, a little bit of it's come back, but still that was a big loss for us. And I don't think that the smoke is cleared yet on the whole issue of government attendance at meetings and government meetings themselves. There also tends to be a bit of a holdover from the worst years of the downturn, where organizations that used to send 5 people to a convention started sending 2, and maybe they're sending 3 now, but they're not getting back to the 5. So we find a lot of trade and professional associations' attendance numbers are down from historic highs just because people have found a way to get by with fewer people attending than they had traditionally and during flusher times. So as we look at the different research out there, we find that some people are saying meetings will be up this year. Others are saying, well, our attendance is down, but we'll be doing more smaller meetings. So it's kind of a mixed bag. We see a flat or slightly improved meetings outlook, but the good news is that tourism and business travel, which is often forgotten in this market, but frankly is what fuels most of our limited service, non-gaming properties here. The rates they run and the business that they see on a weekly basis tends to be corporate travelers, not related to meetings so much or tourism. And so that is an important part of our mix here as well going forward. On the operations side, we're delighted that Wild Sheep Show is across the street at the Reno Sparks Convention Center. It's great to have them back in that facility, and they had very, very positive things to say about the Reno experience at our pre-con the other day, and are looking at record numbers this year in terms of attendance. So their loyalty and business at this time of year is greatly appreciated. If you've been over at the Convention Center, you might have noticed as well that we do have some new signage up in concert with our friends at EDON. Mike Kuzmersky and I have been talking about this for quite a while, but we made some real estate available to them to put out their B2B messaging, realizing that people who attend conventions and conferences are also business people who may have the potential to bring not only meetings here, but also new offices for their company or expand existing businesses. So we've got a lot of big walls in that center, as we do in the bowling stadium, and at the expense of EDON, we've given them the opportunity to put those signs into the facility. So take a look at that next time you're in there. They're the new thin backlit panels. Used to be called Duratrans, but they're much narrower than they used to be without any external wiring. So it's quite a nice installation, and we think a good show of our partnership here in the community as we continue to work together on a lot of things, including new air service, et cetera. But we all need to support each other, even in the areas that are only overlap with ours and are not our primary focus. So that is my rather brief President's report for the first month of 2014. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments based on that report? All right. Then is there a motion to accept the report? There's a motion. There's a second to accept the report. Is there any discussion of that motion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. Now we have the items for board consent. Board member reminded me recently that we have this legend in here. We have consent items. It's a policy question. By practice, we've been going over the transient lodging, the convention sales, tourism, et cetera, having a full report, a discussion. In the alternative, you don't have to do that. That's what consent is. Someone can make a motion, accept the consent agenda. Then we slam through this, and we're out of here in 15 minutes. So consent agenda. Does anyone wish any discussion? Having said that, we do have some extraordinary items, the special events partnership and the creation of the customer advisory committee. I believe those are important policy decisions, and I think the board may wish to hear about them.
Mr. Chairman?
I saw Mr. Curtis first. Excuse me.
I just want to mention that I'll have questions on certain items.
Thank.
Some of them I don't mind taking collectively, but I will have questions on some.
Thank you very much, sir. And use your microphone if in the future. Mr. Farahi.
Mr. Chairman, I believe the role of this board should be setting strategy, long-term strategy, and coming to these meetings to evaluate how we're doing against our goals and objectives, and monitoring the team's performance as far as achieving those goals and objectives.
I frankly don't think it's our job to come here to hear we went to this show, to that show, because most of you, including myself, who've been in this business for 40 years, may not know what this show or that show is, or we had a dinner for this guy, we had that. Is the results that speak for themselves. That's a day-to-day job that the staff has to do to achieve what our goals and objectives are. And I want to urge the board to consider a 5-year strategic plan with goals and objectives set, very clearly defined, based on having done an extensive study where our opportunities are, why we should go after a certain piece of business and why we should not. I mean, have a detailed strategy of what we need to do, and come to these meetings every month, look at where we are against those goals and objectives, and find out whether we're getting there, what resources we need to accomplish those goals and objectives, and what is the team that is going to take to get that job done. And I have served on this board for, as most of you know, for many years, and my frustration always has been that we just come talk about generalities rather than be focused on goals and objectives that we have to accomplish, and say where are we against those goals and why we are short of it, or why we're doing better. And we have put some thoughts into doing a 5 years strategic plan. I just want to give you an example. Here on the airlines, just you know how unfortunately how unfortunately we have lost, how many seats we have lost. In 2006, we had over 9,500 daily departure seats in Reno, and by 2007 was almost 10,000. And here, this past year, we were only at 6,000 daily departures. We have lost a third of our seats out of this market. And the reason we have lost it, having served on the airport board, it's a chicken and egg issue. The airlines say, show me that there's a demand, we will bring you the seats. And the commissioners come and say, well, you don't have the seats, so we cannot come to your destination, like what we just heard last year with Safari, that there's not enough seats to this destination and the fares are too high and we have to cancel our flight. So all I want to say, I want to urge if this board would consider to get a 5-year strategic plan with an extensive study done behind it, so we can monitor our performance and hopefully turn this trend around.
Thank you very much. I was about to ask you to attach those comments to one of the items under board consent. It sounds to the chair like you were under board member comments or items for future meetings. And we will certainly be happy to record those comments and then treat that as an item for next board's agenda, if you wish.
I would like to ask if the board would consider to put that on the agenda for discussion at the next board meeting.
I think you just asked, and I don't think you need to ask anybody else. It will be on there. If you'd kindly work with Ms. Charlotte to shape the agenda item and so that we get it worded the way that you wish. You said a lot of things there, and they're all important. We want to record them carefully.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I think that those comments probably fit under the Marketing Committee E topic very clearly. And I'm glad to hear you express that request, Mr. Farahi, because it's something that I've asked for in the planning process for the last couple of years as well. I think that we do need to be broader in terms of long range and more specific about actions and measurements.
Thank you for that interpretation. We'll let the comment show as being made under item E, marketing. Thank you. Commissioner Weber.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I think the question that you asked is whether or not we need to go through each item as we've done in the past. And I do think that some discussion on these items are important. For example, the Facilities Committee did meet, and there are issues that are under the consent item that do need to be discussed. And so I don't know if it has to be a lengthy discussion, but I think that we should be commenting on these portions, as well as I wanted to ask another question. I thought we had a committee that worked on the strategic plan over the last year or two. Did we not?
It sounds like it might be part governance and this ad hoc governance committee.
It's always been the marketing committee, I think, Mr.
Okay.
Chair. Yeah. And then finance, and then this board. But it's really generated at marketing. And for comment on the consent agenda, perhaps one of the methods that would work for this board is what's used at the city council, and that's if anyone has any of the items, they just say, I'd like discussion on C, F, and G. And then they make anybody else who has individual ones, and then a motion is made for all the rest to just approve. But if you want comment and more information and questions on any specific one, absolutely pull them up.
Well, now, first, Mr. Curtis gave notice that he had questions on some of the consent items. Then Commissioner Weber said that its chair would interpret it as she would like description by staff as to all of the items and possible discussion. That, in effect, pulls all of them out for separate discussion. We can still have a group vote at the end. That was not your intent? Okay.
No, I think the point made by Councilwoman Zadra is a good one. And I think that's probably a fast way of going, and if we have discussion. And Mr. Curtis said he had quite a few questions, so
Okay.
he can hold those out.
Okay, let's do it that way. Mr. Curtis, what are the items that you wish specific discussion on?
Item D and then item E, really.
All right.
And actually, I have a small question on item F.
Item F. Now, Commissioner Weber, you called attention to the Facilities Committee, which you chair, and you alluded that you might have some discussion there on specific items.
Mr. Chairman, I would refer to Mr. Kelly, but I think item M needs some discussion.
Item M,
Am I correct,
as
Mr. Kelly?
in Mary.
Or just a comment?
Certainly, we can talk a little bit about the critiques. I think, Ms. Weber, we did have a pretty candid discussion about the concern that staff has with the performance, in particular, of our food service. That I think, I believe that's what she's referring to, Mr. Chairman.
I agree that would be a good discussion. Anyone else? Any of the facility items or any of the other items in the other block? So then, Mr. Curtis, do you wish to pose a question, or what is the nature of your discussion as to item D?
Well, I read item D. And I don't like the idea at all. And did not. And so, recognizing that I only have one more month. I might or might not make it. So I thought, you know what? I'm just read it, and I have my own impressions and my own thoughts and perspectives, but I would like to understand further the purpose of this customer advisory board. My own feeling, my own impression is that I would never serve on such an advisory board. I don't know why a person would. Maybe they get a free flight, but it seems like it's an idea. And I applaud that, because we have to do things. If we continue to do what we've done, we're going to continue to get what we've got. So from that standpoint, I think it's great to come up with a new idea. I just happen to not like this idea, but I'd like to hear from staff as to why it's a good idea, because I want to reserve the right to change my opinion based on what I hear.
Sir, I would say that I had a similar view as it hit me cold and I was left cold. Wasn't excited about it, but I sat through the presentation at the marketing committee, and I think we should have that presentation now. I think that would be positive. In summation, I think it represents a kind of an industry standard in this industry to set up one of these committees, and the president, I believe, can give that presentation. Is it all right if we go to that now, Mr. President?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Customer advisory boards are a bit of an industry standard. Not every organization has them, but most hotel chains, large independent hotel properties, and certainly the vast majority of destination marketing organizations have determined that having an ongoing opportunity to speak face-to-face at length with customers and prospects about what they're doing, how it's impacting them, what they could do better, who of their competitive set does that especially well, is a valuable process. When I was vice president of Sonesta International Hotels, we actually had two of them. We had a travel agency advisory board. This was a number of years back when travel agents were still a big part, certainly of the leisure market. And then we had a meeting planner advisory board. When I subsequently went to Detroit, we had a meeting planner advisory board. At one point in my career, I actually served on the Intercontinental Hotels advisory board as one of their customers. And what happens is that our salespeople get a lot of anecdotal evidence from customers. They'll go to a trade show and somebody will say, "I really love that new ad you're running. I see it everywhere. I had no idea you guys had so much space in your convention center." Well, there's a little anecdotal tidbit that our advertising is breaking through to some customers. What you don't have is a back and forth, more fully fledged conversation about your advertising and how it impacts people, how they see it, whether it's in the right places, et cetera. And I guess it's technically possible you could pick up the phone and call a lot of people individually, but the way the industry tends to say it should be done is once or twice a year, a group of customers who've expressed an interest of helping you out and adding to their resume, quite frankly. It is seen as a bit of a coup to be a desirable member of an advisory board in our industry. And it's not uncommon for somebody to go off of one organization's advisory board and right on to somebody else's. And there are certain customers who everybody wants on their advisory board because they're with a blue chip organization. The understanding, and it's never really voiced, but the understanding is that if somebody serves on your advisory board, not only are they helping you, but they also become a bit of a cheerleader for your destination. And when you go to trade shows, there's a presumption that somebody on your advisory board is going to introduce you to a peer that you might not know and recommend they talk to you, or give you a help when you host an event and show up and maybe even wearing your shirt, just like a member of your team from your destination or company, and use their standing in the industry to support what you're doing. It's kind of that syndrome where when somebody's taken hostage, they tend to eventually sort of get closer to their captors. Exactly. When you serve on an advisory board, after a while, it's sort of understood that, I'm going to help these guys. I'm not just going to help them by telling them something for a day and a half, but I'm going to help them throughout the year. They can call me and ask my opinion. They can ask me to show up someplace, and I will, et cetera. So for a relatively small expenditure, you are doing a couple things. You're allowing yourself to have a longer conversation on whatever topics are of interest to you and your board and getting a better understanding of. And, let's be honest, if you've been in the business for a while, very often the customer just tells you what you already know. But that's important too, because if we always assume we know the answer without talking to the customers, maybe at some point something changed and we didn't keep up with it. And in this industry, there are things that are very different today than they were 10 years ago. And if you never have a format to talk to customers about it on an ongoing and more structured basis, you may be making assumptions that are keeping you from being as successful as you could be. Because we're a destination, The hotels would typically accommodate the visitors. We would pay for the airfare, we would pay for the moderator. The overall expenses are not too high. And I think at this stage in the game where things are getting better, but we still haven't, really moved the needle as far as we need to in meetings and conventions, at least for a couple of years, it would be helpful to have this process available to us to gather data. It's great to go to a research company and say, give us a report on these areas. It's another thing to have total control of the conversation and be able to find out from customers some aha moments that'll help you be more successful in your sales and marketing efforts. So we believe that we've done a lot of things right in the last 2 years. Our big ASAE sponsorship, our more aggressive marketing. We've dropped some salespeople and brought in some stronger ones. Those are all working in our favor. There's a bit of a gap, though, in that face-to-face feedback from the end user. And the important thing in these two is it's not a bunch of yes men. You don't just take all your best customers and put them on your advisory board. You put a couple of customers who know you well, because it's important to have their perspective, but you also put people you've gone after for 20 years and have never booked. And you've also got, frankly, on the good ones, have people on there who've said, no, I'm not coming to your destination. Because you need their perspective too. What is it that's preventing them from ever saying yes to you? And is there any way to get around that or find a solution? So that's why we think an advisory board would be a good addition. We do have the funds available now because of some shifts we've made in our lineup of sales activities this year. And I think there's little downside to trying it. We'll get some feedback. If we decide never to do it again, that's an option as well, if we find it useful. And I would recommend we do it once a year. A lot of destinations, like a Chicago, they might do it twice a year, sometimes even more. I don't think that's necessary for a destination like ours. I think once a year, and with one of the handful of moderators that are well-known in the industry, who also help us turn out the customers. So that's kind of the thinking behind it. And this is not a new concept. It's just one that I think probably benefit from at this stage in our development.
Let's go to Mr. Hawkins and then come back to you if that's all right, Mr. Hawkins.
Yeah, you mentioned the moderator, but I was just curious, what would the moderator do in this particular instance for $10,000 each time?
Well, the moderator really runs the entire event, so it's a turnkey thing. Our sales team is already in anticipation of perhaps going forward with this. Our sales team has gone ahead and taken their database and made recommendations to John of who might be some prospects to invite. The moderators of these advisory boards tend to be very high-profile people in the industry, and very often they can help you get somebody who's a very desirable member that you may not currently have the relationship with. They work with you in putting together the agenda. They run the entire meeting, take extensive notes, and write follow-up after the fact. Everybody uses an outside moderator. Nobody does it themselves. Sometimes the moderator has to be a little bit of an SOB to get things back on track, or keep one person from dominating, and that's better handled by someone who is on contract to your organization and not a part of your organization. The fee is very consistent across moderators. It's $10,000 to $15,000 typically for these people. It's a nice gig for them, but there are about 3 or 4 companies in the country that really do it, because it's kind of an area of expertise that a lot of folks don't have the capabilities for.
May I add something?
Sure.
The other thing about the moderators, because they have a practice of doing these advisory boards for other destination or other brands, they're very well in tune to best practices across all of the industries that we deal with and the customers. So they have the ability to bring in nuances that they may have learned in other destinations and probe with, how does that apply to our strategies and what we're trying to do. So they bring another perspective that's more global based on their other advisory board experiences.
Thank you. Let's go to Mr. Ferrari, then to Mr. Curtis.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I believe the reason I spoke before is because of the list of things we have on this agenda. And if we had a long-range strategic plan, and then we had developed our tactics, how we're going to accomplish those goals, then this would be part of that overall strategy. How are we going to accomplish our goals? What are the tools we need? What are the things we need to do? So in my mind, something like this should be part of that much bigger picture. Then when we decide what area of the business we are going after, because that's what we are suited for, or this destination is suited for the best, then we're gonna find people in those specific areas that would help us to accomplish our goals. So all I wanna suggest is that we put our goals together first and then come up with the tactics and what we need to get the job done, and then we have our plans in place.
Thank you very much. That was very specific. Mr. Curtis?
Well, first off, Chris, thanks for the outline. You brought up a couple of points that were interesting to me, and I have a few comments and questions. The idea of doing what you described through an advisory committee is fundamental to everything that we ought to be doing, and we ought to be doing it all the time. You should be doing it, John should be doing it, the sales agent should be doing it, we should all be doing it in terms of understanding the strengths, the weaknesses, the opportunities, and the threats associated with our destination, our business, in relationship to our customers. That should happen all the time. And I would hope that if we had an advisory committee, we would not relegate that responsibility to the advisory board. It has to be through all of us, collectively, at all times. That's my opinion as a former CEO. The second thing is, you pointed out that people actually like to get on these advisory committees. Now, that's a new one for me. As I went through this, I thought, now, why on earth would I want to do this? But if, you know what? You're in the business. I'm not. And if you tell me that people do this and they like it and they willingly participate, that's great, because what you said here, one huge benefit received from having an advisory board is that participating customers become strong advocates of the destination and most likely will bring business. Great. I mean, if that happens, I'm all in favor of it. The overall expenses are not too high. I'd like to actually ask specifically how much you intend to spend both in terms of money and in terms of time. And you mentioned that you had funds available through shifting some things around. If you could elaborate on that just a little bit. Again, if we continue to do what we've done, we'll continue to get what we've got. And so I'm sure many of you know Herb Kelleher, Southwest Airlines. One time he said, you know what we do at Southwest Airlines is we just do things. And if they work, great. And if they don't work, we don't do it again. To me, this sort of falls into that same category. While I understand and appreciate exactly what John is saying, and I agree with it, and I have been an advocate of a strong strategic plan for a long time, this falls into the category of, like, let's give it a whirl. Let's understand the cost, let's understand the time commitment, let's understand what we expect in terms of benefits, and then let's see if it works. If it works, great. If it doesn't work, we get rid of it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional comment, Ms. Carano?
Thank you. First of all, when I made the motion at our marketing committee to approve the creation of an advisory board, I too was skeptic at first and listened to Mr. Baum. I think I prefaced that I wanted to see how it goes and review it and maybe run it for a couple years, and he made that presentation in your presentation today. So I think it's a good idea. I think it's something that we can go forward and see how it works, and if it doesn't work, we put our resources someplace else. To Mr. Farahi's remarks regarding a strategic plan, we did approve a strategic plan for the RSCVA in March, and I'm looking at it right now. We had 5 strategies, and it's not as detailed, I'm sure, as we would want, but I think that it did cover something to this extent. Number 2 and number 3, number 2 was to make Reno Sparks and Tahoe a player in the convention industry by creating high-profile partnerships. And I think that falls under this. Number 3 was to use aggressive and creative marketing programs in effect to educate our target audiences, and I think this falls. So I think we're trying new things, and this is new to Reno Sparks, maybe we've done it in the past, but I think that we should go forward with this and review it in a few years. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Mr. Flynn and then back to Mr. Fry.
This advisory council had been brought up under the prior to John and prior to Chris as something to explore, and unfortunately never got off the ground. But at the time, I was asked to be part of this group of people to explore the opportunity. And I did my due diligence and reached out to other destinations off the top of my head, Palm Springs, San Diego, Salt Lake, and asked those destinations feedback. How did this work for you? And it was pretty unanimous in terms of feedback that it was very beneficial for the destination, and that was the reason that they continued to do it, was because of the feedback, because of the ties with the planners. So I think that in this, I think we should give it a try. And based on the feedback that I received at that time, it did work for the destinations.
Mr. Fry.
Mr. Chairman, I did ask for a strategic plan for 5 years, and they said we do not have a 5 years strategic plan. So I don't know what we are talking about. Is it for 1 year, or is it so I'm looking, I think we need to have a 5 years and an in-depth study so we can determine what that strategy is based on. What studies have we done to determine where we should position our destination against other destinations in this country. So I'm talking about much more in-depth study and putting the plans together. So I have not seen what I've seen, frankly, is very is not to the detail and how we're going to get there and what we need to get the job done.
If I could comment, it appears that we're establishing some consensus that appears to the chair to be, perhaps we can start this. It could start now and work on the day-to-day activities, those known marketing efforts, and making our destination match what the industry requests or requires to set up that standard. And we could then combine that with a strategic planning effort to establish more set goals, more long-term goals, and then try to incorporate those goals into the work of the Customer Advisory Committee. Is that a fair statement, board members? Mr. Lehman.
One thing I wanted to also point out is the makeup of the advisory board. The way we will set this up is that we will have customers representative of the various business segments that we know are important to the destination, also business segments that we have historically either done well with or business segments that we want to do better with. So we will be bringing a voice that will allow us to be more strategic, allow us to make sure that our ideas and our concepts resonate with that particular customer set. And our goal will be to find those representatives that can speak to that customer base, that segment, trade show markets, the sports markets, third parties, associations, citywides. So we'll be bringing together a great accumulation of thought leaders in the industry that can help us shape ourselves up against our comp set, and we'll learn our best practices. The other great thing that is they get a chance to also assess us as a product. What do they see? What do they, we'll be giving them tours of the destination, letting them take in all of our products and services and make comment on that. And some of that stuff we may most likely won't get some surprises, but we may get some ahas. And we will also facilitate what their recommendations are and adapt to them. Some things we will be able to do, some things we won't be able to do. But my experiences in working with advisory boards at a brand level have been phenomenal in finding ways that we may not know if we don't talk to our customer in this type of forum. Yes, we do talk to them on an individual basis. That is an important part of our day-to-day factor. When you're in this environment, it brings on a whole nother set of collaboration and also a whole nother way of being able to be creative and work together as a team that you don't get on a one-on-one. They don't feed off of each other that way. And it's very powerful. It works. Otherwise, we wouldn't see other destinations and other brands do this as part of our industry. Now, to the point, it isn't something that's just sort of a, let's go try it. It is something that we have wanted to put into our part of our whole package, or whole of our strategy and tactics. The funding wasn't there. But because we took a sales mission that was scheduled to be in February, we ran into a whole lot of date conflicts. We have moved that activity to the next fiscal year. That freed up these dollars. My concern, if we don't do this now, it's going to be harder to do it next fiscal year because we have a lot of other things to try to accomplish. We do want to carry this over year to year, but the timing of this helps us with this 3-5 year plan, whatever we're looking for. This feedback is an important part of that groundwork. It is a foundation of what we want to accomplish.
Thank you. Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say that I was originally questioning this as well. Had Mr. Curtis not pulled this off of consent, I would have done so because I wanted to have some more discussion on it. I appreciate the comments from Mr. Farahi concerning the strategic plan and response from Ms. Carano. But I don't believe that the strategic plan is that we have and have adopted. I don't think it's a good one because there's not enough detail to it. And I think most board members, if we were to have an open discussion, would agree with that. I note that this first meeting of the advisory board, if it is approved today, would not occur until November. So you got a little bit of, that's not true?
No, the goal would be to have this first advisory board before June 30. So what happened was we moved the sales mission in February to November, which is what freed up these dollars.
Oh, okay.
So we would have the advisory board in this fiscal year.
But what I think needs to happen is the strategic plan that has been adopted by the board should be revisited so that we have very clearly stated goals and objectives so that we know specifically what we want in the 3 to 5 year time frame, not just the short term, which we tend to deal a lot with here at the board, at our board meetings. There needs to be detailed work plans so that we have some way of measuring the progress that staff is making. Some of the things that have been occurring in the last year, I've frankly been very happy with because we're starting to see results. But there really isn't a way to get down and deal with them, not the minutia, but the detail of how much forward progress we're actually making on implementing the strategic plan. And once we get those work plans, which is done by staff, there should be measurement indicators that are included in the plan that allow us to monitor and measure what we're doing and how much progress we're making to move this agency forward and to get to the ultimate outcome that we want. And then finally, there needs to be a quarterly report that's made to this board on the work plans so that we can see the actual assessment of performance. In another setting, what you might be talking about here is a performance audit to come in and check to see by peers to see how well we were doing against what we said we wanted to do to move the organization forward. So I'm going to support this today, but I think with the caveat that we have additional discussion on creating a strategic plan that this board can buy into that will include such things as work plans and not just goal statements, because I think that will get us to where we need to be, and it will give this group that will meet on our behalf an opportunity to assess what we're doing against what we say we want to do. And if we find that there are changes that need to be made, we can make those changes to refine the plan, refine those performance indicators, and get us to where we want to be.
Thank you. That takes us to Ms. Zadra.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too think that this is a valuable strategy and one that will give us kind of an outside assessment that many of us have advocated for some time. So I'm excited about that. I'm curious how and who will select the actual members. I understand that the moderator is one of a limited number that are out there and available. Is it that moderator, which I will tell you I'm proposing would be a better performance for that moderator to then select the members versus staff, or how is that done? Are you anticipating that you and John, would identify the members of the board and invite them? And the reason why I qualified that I think it should be the moderator is we all have done, most of us anyway, in our businesses and entities, do a lot of research. And this is in essence a research technique. And you can pretty much select who you want to do your work, and who you select will give you the answer that you want. So that's my assessment in putting boards together. Tell me how you would anticipate moving forward with this.
Well, as previously noted, the sales team is putting forth candidates from their territories so that we have that available should we move forward with this item. We would then share that list with the selected moderator, and they would go through the list, and there's no hard and fast way it's done by different destinations. If we ask them to do it, they will make all the asks themselves directly, not from us, but from their organization on behalf of us. We will tell them what our most important market segments are, the fact that we do a lot in sporting competitions here. That's not the case in many destinations around the country. So we would like to have some people from a large customer who brings business here, or a prospective customer who brings his business here, of sporting competitions. That might not appear in other ones. So we have to give them some insight into what our mix is here. But we can give them 100 names and have them put together a board of 12 people from that without any input from us beyond the categories. We can certainly take ourselves totally out of it. What often happens, it's often a joint kind of effort where we know this person, we've been going after the business for 10 years, so we extend the invitation to them, but he says, this person over here, you've never done business with them, but I think they'd be very valuable to you, and he or she would make that invite. So they will handle it however we give them the input, but the ones I've been involved with, there's been no hand-picking based on predisposition. I realize there's always the opportunity for that. I've never seen it happen because some of the people we've gotten have been very vocal in the negative, and they probably would never been selected if that was the criteria. But the moderators that John and I have already spoken to in doing our due diligence have indicated that they'd be happy to make the asks themselves based upon the raw materials that are provided by our staff.
And then secondly, over time, we've heard you explain when you initially joined us, and you've repeated it since, that Nevada, in particular the RSCVA, Northern Nevada, really doesn't have an image out there. It's not that it has a bad image, it just doesn't have much awareness or image. And we've also heard expression that it can be difficult to get the most qualified people for positions that we've had open because people just don't know enough about our organization or appreciate what our organization does. So will those two factors that you've expressed to us before actually inhibit or have any kind of negative or positive influence on selecting the participants of this board that will be able to give us valuable information?
Well, the good news is we've made significant progress in both of those areas. I don't want to beat a dead horse. The ASAE, strategic sponsorship, our name and our logo, and we're hosting conferences for them. We have become part of the mix of information in the industry in a way that we weren't before. The fact that we were able to hire 2 A-plus sales people for the openings we created within the last year, I don't think those people would have come to work for us 3 years ago. They came to work for us, and those are highly paid senior people who are working elsewhere and left their jobs to join us. So that was a leap of faith on their part. I think that our reputation in the industry is such that we're on the move, and I think that industry will carry over to applicants for this. We just booked the American Gas Association. That is one of the most blue-chip organizations in the country. We haven't had them here for a zillion years, but Jennifer Bumbelow, one of our new hires, brought them in for a definite meeting. So I think that was a concern I voiced when I got here, and certainly repeated perhaps in my first year. I think it's much less of a concern now. People know who we are. We've been hitting them over the head with our advertising message, our sponsorships, and they've seen our salespeople in a more proactive way. So the good news is I don't think that would be a factor.
I actually think where we are positioned in our industry would be a tremendous joy for a board member to join in, because they know they would making a difference. When you're on an advisory board for Chicago, San Diego, San Francisco, their role and support in trying to move a destination forward isn't that significant. But they can make an impact here. They can help make a difference in how we position ourselves, and as well as being our advocate and friends and fans of the destination. So I think that they would be more excited about joining our advisory board than an easy one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, before we go to Mr. Hawkins, our counsel has some advice.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I reviewed this staff report, always view it when you're creating a board or going to this open meeting law consideration. So I just want to make a couple points so they're clear on the record. One would be, I want to make sure that this board is not delegating any sort of its powers or duties to this advisory board, which I don't read this that it is. It's customer feedback and assessment. I want to make that clear on the record, and staff understand that. The second is, if there is board member participation, I want to make sure that to the extent there is, we don't end up with a quorum of any of our committees or a quorum of this board participating. I view it as something separate, but just want to make that clear on the record for everyone.
Based on that, let me clarify. Are you saying that if this board creates that board, that does not make it an open meeting law committee, but if we delegate certain duties to it from this board, that would make it a open meeting law committee?
It would create a question, and we'd have to look at it, but I don't see this as delegating any of sort of the authority of this board to this committee.
All right, we have been advised. Mr. Hawkins. Mr. Curtis.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for this discussion.
Microphone.
Thank you for the discussion. I appreciate everybody's input. I think it was worthwhile. And so it's my understanding we're looking at a budget of $21,700. There has been a savings of $45,000. It's a result of the meeting in Washington that we're not going to. Based on this discussion, I'm going to support the notion of proceeding with this advisory board. I would like to ask that as we secure members, as you go around to put them together, that you give us an update in the President's report. That's a very useful document to us, and let us know how it's going. I think it's worthwhile for us to understand on a periodic basis, really, how it's doing and what we're getting out of it. And so I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we proceed with this Customer Advisory Board and ask that we are updated periodically, every other month or whenever something happens, as to the creation of the board, because obviously that's a pretty important factor as to who you have on the board. If you have the janitor, nothing against janitors, but you know, they might not be the ones you want. But I'd like to get some top people on this board, and if you can do that, I mean, that sounds great to me. So keep us posted. And then as we have the meetings, I'm sure we'll all be very interested to hear what the feedback is. So with that, I'll make a motion to proceed with the Customer Advisory Board.
There is a motion, and there was a second. Does anyone wish additional detail in that motion? We could also establish that the motion be carried out pursuant to the consensus that was described here today. There's a lot of discussion about strategic plan and that sort of thing.
That may
You're now wishing to have that incorporated in?
I'm wishing not to have that incorporated.
Wishing not
I'm-
to, okay.
I'm wishing to leave my motion the way it was, but
Okay.
I'm wishing to have us remember what we talked about.
Okay, well, I didn't hear you the first time because you didn't have your mic on. Going to give you a walk-around mic pretty soon. All right, so we have a motion and we have a second. You know, we'll see what happens, and perhaps we'll ask for additional motions on this item. See how that goes. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no.
I abstain on that one,
Let's,
please. See that.
thank you very much. I saw no noes, and there is one abstention entered by Mr. Farahi on that motion. At the risk of flogging this issue some more, is there any other action? Any other motions? Well, perhaps that strategic planning initiative will come back again through a separate motion. All right. That was item D. Mr. Curtis also requested item E. Mr. Curtis, what do you request? You want a full staff oral report, or do you wish to pose your questions? Mike?
Along the lines of John's comments, I note, and I'm not part of the marketing committee, so I don't have the benefit of going there, but I am a member of the board, so that's why I'm here now. We're at 72% of month-to-date goals, 70% year-to-date goals, 69% year-to-date goals, total room nights. I'd just like an assessment, kind of down and dirty, you might say, as to how we're doing, whether you're satisfied with where we're at right now, whether you feel that we will achieve our goals for this year, and just kind of how we're doing.
Well, I'm not satisfied because we're not over 100%. You know, we've discussed in previous board meetings some of the reasons for that. The good news is that in addition to those 21,923 room nights we booked definite in December, there was another 17,436 that we had hoped to book, but still haven't finished the paperwork. And we've discussed this in detail before, that until the hotels get the customer to sign the paperwork, we don't take credit for it. So there's more business out there. As I addressed earlier, we need more in the pipeline, and that is why we have made prospecting a top priority for our salespeople and forced them into a structure that doesn't allow them to wiggle out of it. There are a number of very positive trends, however. One of those trends is that 93% of the December business generated is new business, not repeat business. So almost 100% of what we booked in December, those 22,000 room nights, hasn't been here before. That's what we need to do. We need to get people who have never been to Northern Nevada to start signing contracts to come here and hopefully return here in the future. That's a very positive trend. We also, year-to-date, have sent out 204 leads. Last year, year-to-date, 138. So significant increase in the number of opportunities for our hotel partners to take advantage of. So those are positive trends. We're also seeing our new hires coming through with some very dramatic progress in terms of new bookings, both on a definite basis and long-term business we're getting on the books on a tentative basis. And if you look at the leads that came in the last couple of months of 2013, a lot of new business and a lot of good-sized business. One of our challenges has been, too, the size of our groups over the last couple of years has gone down. And what would be a good booking in the past might have been 4,000 room nights, and in the last couple of years, it's been more like 2,000 room nights. Well, you need twice as many at that level to have the same impact on the bottom line. But these new tentatives coming in, leads coming in on a tentative basis in the last few months of the year, 6,500 room nights, 10,000 room nights, 4,500 room nights, 5,200 room nights, 3,800 room nights, 3,500 room nights, 8,400 room nights, 6,500 room nights, 3,000 room nights, 2,600 room nights, 3,400 room nights. Those are all actual pieces of business we're working on right now with our hotel partners, and they're all at a much higher room night total than the typical booking we've been getting recently. So our refocused sales staff, our new hires, are delivering. What they need to do is deliver more, and they need to have more tentatives in the pipeline to pull from. Because if you run out of tentatives, you got to start from scratch, and we always have to have conversions you can make based upon a big backlog of potential. Are we going to make our goal this year? I think we're going to come a lot closer to our goal this year than we have in recent years. I don't know that we can make that 228. If a number of things go our way, it certainly is within the realm of possibility. I would consider it success if we hit 200. It's a bigger number than we've run for many, many years in this destination. And as I noted in my president's report, one of my former employees in Detroit was all giddy because they had booked 200,000 in a destination with 4.5 million people, and it turns out that 60,000 was from one booking. Well, you know, we have our bowling congresses and the occasional big hit like that, but those are few and far between. And if you're making your goals on big hits like 60,000 room nights at a pop, that's not really a sustainable strategy. You need the 4,000 to 6,000 room groups over and over and over again, and that's what our focus is right now. So, mixed bag, am I happy? No. Am I thinking positively about what the real trends are? Bigger groups, more of them, more new business that's never been here instead of repeats? Yes, those are all moving in the right direction and in a significant way.
Anything else on item E? Go ahead.
Yeah, just thank you for that. That's exactly what I was looking for. One other question. In terms of the groups that you're seeing coming in, and the competition that exists within the marketplace that's different than it was, say, 6 years ago, or 8 years ago, or whatever the number was, is clearly we've had an opportunity to expand the number of meetings and the number of visitors coming to this region, and I really feel like you're doing a great job doing that, Chris, Beaton, and John, and your whole staff. But tell me about the competition as it relates to working with the hotel partners to actually secure these room nights. Are you having to give the store away in order to get these conventions, get these meetings, get the business, or are you able to negotiate better deals or decent deals, or how does that play out?
Well, I mean, the terms are lousy compared to 20 years ago, but it's been pretty consistent in recent years, and that is there are too many convention centers in the United States, there are too many big hotels, and it's very competitive, and giving things away is the norm today. It's not like giving a discount is the norm, giving it away is the norm in most markets, and we've got to be competitive if we want the business based on the other profitability factors, certainly the room block being first and foremost. So it's very competitive. One of the things that we can do here is find those niches that we do well in and really be aggressive in those in a way that perhaps a lot of our competition isn't. Multi-level marketing firms is one of the areas we've seen a lot of success with recently and future potential. Jennifer out of DC recently had a sales trip in Ohio and came up with a great new opportunity there for us in multi-level marketing. And it's a big group and has a lot of potential, and there's some creative ways that John and his team are going out to that organization to try and get that business here. That's not an area that a lot of destinations might specialize in. It works very well for this destination, and I think by not going head-to-head with bigger, more powerful entities, blue chip national trade and professional associations, we get some of them. We got American Gas. But can we get them as successfully as Orlando can get them, or even a destination like San Diego that we compete with all the times? Perhaps not. But we do very well in the sports market, multi-level marketing, we do very well. There are certain categories that we found we have an easier time being successful in. And I think it's a smart thing to do as we reinvent this destination, to know what our strengths are and play to them, and not beat our head against the wall against a lot of stiff competition in segments that maybe someday we can get more of, but are a real tough uphill battle right now. But people are giving it away. Fortunately, we have some built-in price advantages here because we are a less expensive market, and we play that up very strongly, the value proposition. You've heard it from us before, and the thing that always makes the planner smile and comment is coffee for under $40 a gallon. That's kind of a standard across the country that people can't believe because they're so used to paying $80 or $100 a gallon for coffee. It's crazy what other destinations are doing. But that value proposition is kind of our secret weapon, but we also have to be realistic about the business we can get now and the business that's a longer shot for us. I don't know if that answers your question, but.
All right, we're on a consent agenda. So this item is an ordinary recurring item, so we'll take a vote on that, even though we took a separate vote on D. That was an unusual item. That would be the intent. Next up, pursuant to the request, was item M. Mary M. Madam Commissioner, did you want a full report, or did you have you want to pose questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that Mr. Kelly could just explain a little bit about what was discussed at our facilities meeting about food service.
I believe you're right. Go ahead, sir.
Excuse me. Thank you, Ms. Weber. We did have a pretty candid conversation as far as in the facility committee about the concerns that we continue to have with our food service. From a customer satisfaction perspective, they are not performing well. A big part of our frustration is they continue to make the same mistakes over and over again, not only on a service level, but things as simple as sending your commission check on time. A good example would be our December commission check at the Reno Event Center. They just flat out failed to send. And after we called them about it, a week later, this month, just here recently in January, they were late with all 4 facilities. I use the term dysfunction. They whether it's accounting or their food preparation, their ability to be ready on time, it's become it's unacceptable. And as recently as yesterday, Mr. Baum convened a group with John, myself, Brian, and Brett to take some more aggressive steps here in the very near future. We have very serious concerns on their ability to perform. As we discussed now as we have wild sheep in the convention center, we have staff that has to basically go over food service step by step, which is something you should not have to do. For those of you in the hotel business, you have food and beverage managers and you expect a certain level of competence, and we don't have that. And so, like I said, as recently as yesterday, we met to take some more aggressive steps with the senior management at Levy. Well, and without getting too much, I don't want to get too much off the topic. One of the topics, Mr. Farahi, that we have discussed is the possibility of allowing, individuals like yourself to come cater in our building, because their performance is unacceptable. And I don't know, as far as Brett, how much more I'd like to say at this time. Other than we are taking some very aggressive steps to correct their performance.
Thank you.
I don't know, Ms. Weber, if there's something. It has become a very large source of frustration, and it's across the board at all 4 facilities. They're equally poor at all 4 facilities, and it's become a source of embarrassment and frustration for us that we can no longer tolerate.
If I may add, Mr. Chairman, I see every evaluation form for every group that meets in every one of our facilities. And it's almost comical how highly we are rated in every category except catering. We typically get the maximum rating in all line items on everything in the facilities except catering. So you see 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, 7, catering, 4, 3, 2, negative comments, memos attached, outlining how they fell short of even being set up on time or delivering what was ordered on the banquet orders. I've never seen such a consistently bad report card for a catering partner anywhere in my career. So we've had it. We've told them what has to be done. We've discussed it with them. Now the letter's going out in a much more serious fashion, and we will resolve this in the near future because it can't go on.
Thank you very much. Now let's go to Mr. Hawkins, then back to Ms. Weber, then to Mr. Curtis.
I was just going to mention what Mr. Baum mentioned about satisfaction and client critiques has been slipping consistently.
Ms. Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it was important for us to hear this information. Our Facilities Committee heard probably a little bit more, but I just think that every board member needs to know the situation and how we're moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And Mr. Chairman, if I may, one final comment, just so you know, for those of you who aren't familiar, Levy is a very major international company with many, many facilities. This is not a second-tier company that we brought on board. This is one of the top companies in the industry. All the more puzzling why we've not been able to get the response and correction that we've asked for.
Thank you very much. Mr. Curtis.
Thank you for the report. Thank you for the update. I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. Do we have a contractual obligation that is going to be problematic for us to terminate this agreement?
Without getting into attorney-client communication and strategy, there's certain steps we have to go through in the agreement when we consider they're defaulting. Okay. And so that's step number one. There is a thought that if the relationship's so damaged and the problems are so systemic, puts us in a better position. But we have some objective and subjective defaults that are going to be communicated to them, and I think almost a 4-page letter. That letter is being done right now and will be finalized. But that's the first step. You got to, as you know, there's default provisions in every contract that have notice of cure and cure time. So we'll go through those steps, and we'll be as forceful in getting this resolved. So.
Okay. And obviously you got to do that, and so that's great. And I'm pleased to hear that you're doing that, because from what I'm hearing, if you didn't have that contract and didn't have to go all through those steps, John would be taking care of things tomorrow, from my standpoint. So, or to be out to bid. That's what I meant. That's exactly what I meant. What am I thinking? Be out to bid, John. Sorry.
I'm sorry.
So anyway, keep moving. But
okay.
You know, I've fired every single engineer in this town at least once, and rehired them at the right time. And so sometimes you just got to get their attention. So if that's what you got to do.
Okay. Anything else on any of the consent items?
Yes,
Mr. Hall.
Mr. Chairman.
No, I wanted to make a motion to approve consent items 7C through M, with the exception of item D, which was handled separately.
Second.
Thanks. There's a motion and a second, and there was considerable discussion, so the citizen had opportunities to fill out request to speak items as to item C, Charlie, and as to item M, Mary. Ma'am, Ms. Brandhorst, you will speak directly to those topics contained in those agenda items.
I'm going to be talking about the client critic forums. My name is Kathy Brandhorst, Lisa Marie Presley, John Benet Ramsey, John Steele, and I'm also the United States President. I just wanted to mention they've been showing downtown. I've been talking to her. She is the manager for that store, and I'm the owner. And we were talking about turning it into a Dollar Tree store.
Ms. Brandhorst, this item is entitled Review, Discussion, Possible Acceptance of Special Events Partnership, etc. If you would speak to that agenda item, that is what you're entitled to under the open meeting law. Please proceed.
All right, well, he mentioned the hotel managers. They need to be looked into a lot more, because some of the managers to these hotels are not hired. And I don't understand why, you know, you allow people to go into businesses and not even be hired. That's the problem. And they don't even have a contract. They don't even have the purpose of being there at all. And you just allow anybody to go even into a store without a contract, without any sort of a form saying that they can be in business. And this has been really a crucial thing too, because if you don't have them filling out a contract to be in business, why are they there? That is the big problem right now. And if you're going to go to, we stock the shelves with all kinds of products on the shelf. And somebody walks in and says they're going to take it off the shelf and put something else there. Well, that's not what it's, we already signed the contract that we wanted this on the shelf, and that's what's going to stay on the shelf. And whatever you bring in and put on the shelf does not belong there. And we can't sell it either, because you're the ones that picked it someplace and put it on the shelf for us to sell. And this has been a big problem too with most of the businesses downtown. And then kidnapping pets and then trying to sell them because you thought you could make profit off of somebody else's pets. And this has been a real big problem too. And I am getting really upset, you know, that you people don't really notice that this contract was not for them at all.
Ma'am, your time has expired. Now, you may stay there and do your item M, Mary comment. Item M. Shall we go over the terms of that? Review, discussion, approval? No, I called C. Oh, she filled out a third one. She's coming back for a general public comment. That was item C. Now you're on item M. 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, it's going to be the same thing. We're having lots of problems with Wells Fargo Bank. They have never been hired again, but they are working in the Wells Fargo Bank as tellers and bank accountants, and they have never been there as a person that's been hired. And what are they doing? Well, they don't have jobs, they don't have an income, so they're going to be stealing people's bank accounts. I was standing in line and I heard, oh, that's some U.S. military and she's a dismantler, so we're going to have to steal $800 from her payroll check. Now, that's not in business at all. She's going to lose $800 a month, and where are we going to go? We're going to go to the St. Vincent's dining room to get something to eat. And we have to go down to the Mission to get something to eat because we don't have that money in our bank accounts anymore. It's been stolen. And I just wanted to let you know that this has been a very big problem at the Wells Fargo Bank. And if you don't look into this, we're all going to be at the Mission, and we're all going to be at the St. Vincent's dining room. He told me yesterday he had to serve 2,900, and they're all with the Wells Fargo Bank. Now that is growing, and it's growing every day because these people have no way to furnish for their own families like children. Those children are hungry, they're thirsty. I cannot afford to leave a bag of food on the bench for them to eat or something to drink anymore because I don't have the money to help them. And these children are hungry. What are you going to do? They're only 2.5 years old, all the way up to 19 years old, and they cannot feed themselves. Yes, they have jobs, but their payroll checks are stolen from them because the adults think that they could steal these payroll checks from them, and how are they going to stay off the streets? They can't go back to their parents because they're victims in the schools. Yes, when I say victim, they went into the school with their machine gun or their classroom and started shooting down the children in the schools. So they are victims and they're homeless and they could use your help.
Thank you, ma'am. Your time has expired. Let me clarify, Ms. Brandhorst. I made a mistake. I apologize. You had two public comments. One was for the general public comment, item 11. We'll treat your public comment just offered as the general public comment, and we'll lodge it as such. Thank you very much. And so you don't have any more general public comment, okay? Then we do have, as to item C, Chris Hoff. As to item C, the special events.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Chris Hoff. I'm the tournament director of the Reno Tahoe Open. I'll be very brief and hopefully pointed. I wanted to thank you guys for the anticipated support of the Reno Tahoe Open. We are going into our 16th year. The RSCVA has been a fantastic partner of ours over the years. And I think what you'll notice when you look through the list of special events and the funding requested and the funding available that I'm going to speak a little bit outside of just the tournament, that there are a lot of special events out there that certainly have requested some dollars, and the dollars were not available. The dollars were allocated elsewhere. I think we all know the great marketing, the great positive exposure, and ultimately the room nights that special events bring to this community. And I would encourage you guys, as you start the process for 2014/2015 budgeting, that you look at the dollars available for special event funding. I think, I hope I'm not in the minority here, that everybody would agree that they're deserving of more than less than 1% of the total budget when it comes to dollars available. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Let me inquire, is there any other public comment on the consent agenda? I see none. We'll close public comment. Mr. Hall.
Mr. Chairman, just a point of order. If someone submits a request to make a comment on an item that's included on consent, would that be sufficient reason to pull it off of consent?
Let's cross that bridge when we come to it. I don't see that item before us today.
From City Council, the meeting is by the appointed or elected body, and it is those members who determine if there is a subject that will be pulled from consent agenda for discussion. They can speak to it in general public comment at their will.
Well, I think that's a good way to resolve it, and that's not unlike how we do it at the body that Ms. Weber and I normally serve on. Okay? We have a motion on the floor. There's a motion and a second generally to accept the consent items. Is there any additional discussion of that motion? Oh, Mr. You're good. Okay. Thank you, sir. Hearing no additional discussion, all those in favor of the consent motion, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. That would take us to item 8N, November.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You have before you the month of November and 5 months ended November 30 for our fiscal year. For the month of November, room taxes, taxable revenues increased from budget 10.7% or 21% year over year. The components of that, cash occupied rooms were up almost 8,000 or 3.6% from budget, up 20,000 or 10.1% year over year. The rate was up $4.11 or 6.8% from budget, and up $5.81, almost 10% year over year. It was a phenomenal month driven by convention business. For the 5 months, we are at a 5.5% increase from budget or 8.1% year over year. Again, the components of that, cash occupied rooms are down slightly from budget, about 14,000 or 1%, but up slightly, about 2,000, 0.2% year over year. The largest driver here, the first 5 months that we've experienced, and Mr. Baum has pointed this out many times, is the cash average rate so far for the 5 months is up almost $5 or 6.5% from budget, and up nearly $6 or 8% year over year. We've never seen growth like that in this market, so it's great to see. A lot of it is built on convention and group business, but we hope to continue to see it moving forward. On the facility side, revenues are down about 61,000 or 2% from budget through 5 months. Operating expenses are up about 160,000 or 1.9% from budget. A lot of that is driven due to the timing of the marketing spend. Non-operating expenses are a little bit below budget. That's due to the timing of a capital expense that will occur in the future but had been planned to start in September. All said and done, margins through the 5 months were about 330,000, better than we anticipated, largely driven by the growth in room taxes. And with that, I would submit the month of November and 5 months ended November operating results.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions of Mr. Rivers on this report? There's a motion by Councilwoman Zadra. Is that it? All right, and do you also have discussion, sir? Yeah. Go ahead.
Just a question, more general in nature. The fact that the room rates are up, I think, is outstanding, and I don't know who to thank, but I guess I'll thank everybody. But I noticed that the occupied rooms are down. They're a little bit above last year, 2,600 above last year. And again, this is more of a general question. Obviously, we can't anticipate that room rates are going to continue to go up forever. And we had a lot of discussion about what we're doing to go ahead and attract new room nights. I don't want to go there again. But how's it feel this year that the room nights are down a little bit from what was anticipated? Do you have a feeling as to why that may be? Either of you guys can answer that, I don't care.
We're actually pretty happy with where we are given the room rate increases. There was a fear that raising rates would decrease visitation. So to that end, given the huge increases in rate, we're pretty happy with where we are to be at this point, off less than 1% from what we budgeted and above prior year, and to see the great room rate growth that we have is a good thing. There's obviously every year there's differences in group business that has the flow of what's coming in. So some of that we had adjusted for. Coming up in January, we'll know it'll be particularly soft without Safari that we did have in 2013. So there's always those anomalies that are going to affect the group side of rooms. The fear obviously now is with no snow, what that's going to mean in terms of occupancy, particularly to Fred's property and those up and around the lake moving forward, not just looking back.
Thank you. Any other discussion on that item N? Madam Clerk, is there any public comment? We will close public comment on this item. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, on the motion to approve item N, all those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. That passes unanimously. That takes us to item O. Would we go to council?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Under item O, we have the appointment of board member representing Incline Village, Crystal Bay, Convention Visitors Bureau interest pursuant to NRS 244A 601 1D5. Just by way of history on this one, Fred, Mr. Finland filled an unexpired term of Mr. Pardue, and then was subsequently appointed to his own term, which is expiring. You have a letter from the Lake Tahoe Incline Village, Crystal Bay Visitors Bureau requesting a nomination and appointing Fred Finland to an additional 2-year term. By way of procedure, I think everyone knows this, but just a reminder, everyone can participate in the discussion on the appointment, but only our elected officials can make the motion and approve. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any discussion or are there any motions?
I move that we accept the Tahoe Village's Convention and Visitors Authority's recommendation and reappoint Fred to another term.
Thank you. Thank you. There is a motion and a second by the electeds. Now, as to discussion, is there any discussion of that? It's a great nomination. Madam Clerk, is there any public comment? We will close public comment. Thank you. Any additional discussion? And this vote per council is for the electeds only, so 3 tiny voices. We have a bare quorum of electeds here. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. It passes unanimously. Now, do you have any remarks, sir? Thank you very much. Sorry, that would take us to item 9, items for future board meetings. I believe we had the discussion earlier. Any additional items for future board meetings? Anyone? Mr. Farahi, go ahead.
Maybe I should wait till the board members' comments. I'll wait.
All right, we will close out the items for future board meetings and go to board member comments. Let me offer a couple. First of all, John Farahi rejoined the board recently, and I asked his desire, and he wishes to serve on the Finance Committee, and he is hereby appointed to the Finance Committee. Secondly, our council pointed something out to me, and that is under the category of succession planning, board turnover. If I heard him right, he said 9 out of 13 board members are going to be off by the end of 2014. Additionally, the elected in this curious relationship of the makeup of this board, electeds and private sector, all 5 electeds are going off. That is through the action of term limits, I believe, in each and every case. So that's a lot of turnover. That makes, I guess the point being, that makes strategic planning and other initiatives very important. We've got to have some carryover.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, go ahead.
Charlotte turned red face on the Finance Committee appointment. My understanding, Charlotte confirmed this. I think what you said to me, whispered, was that puts us at 7 on the Finance Committee, which makes it a board meeting. Makes it a quorum of the board. So.
That doesn't offend me, that's just another posting. Yeah, it's posted anyway. It'll be secondarily posted as a full board meeting.
We just wanted to disclose that if.
Or you know what else you can do? This is what we found at Washoe County, perhaps the cities have found this. We post the possible gathering of a quorum of a full board, such as at a cocktail reception.
My only concern would be, because there's a majority of the board present at the Finance Committee, and Brett, you could clarify, their action could actually be anything that the Finance Committee approves would be basically board approval. So I just would like some clarification that if something's approved at the Finance Committee, that it would still have to come to the board for the full board approval, even though basically there was board.
It would still be action of the Finance Committee, but there would be a quorum of the board there, and the implications of that, you know, one way or the other, I think you could do it with a notice. You could also see if anyone wants to switch committees. There's 7 members on that now, so, and we do have a void on, I believe now, marketing because of Beth's seat there. So, I mean, that's also an option. So, it's, Chair, it's in your discretion on how you want to move forward.
Thank you. I was going to bring that up. Marketing is light in membership. We checked the bylaws and hesitate to go into this, but there's no limitation on the number of committees to which the chair can appoint you all board members. It seems practical that we appoint someone additionally to marketing who is already serving on another committee. What why don't we call that an announcement? Oh, yeah, board member comments. So if someone is so inclined that they would like to serve on marketing, perhaps we can do that. If someone is so inclined that they wish to forego their additional service on finance, that might reduce some of our difficulties as well. I don't mean to talk all day. Thank you. Mr. Frahe, I believe you had comment.
Where we stand on the air races. Do we know what's going on?
Well, this organization has approved through two separate motions $100,000 in support of the air races going forward. I did have lunch yesterday with one of their board members and got an update, and they are proceeding with this year's event. They are negotiating the limits of their liability and the cost of their insurance program, and they're looking at ways to perhaps add new elements to the air races in 2014 to perhaps take the traditional event but add elements that might bring in a younger audience or bring in guests who have a different focus of interest but would also add to their participation. So it's a smaller board with 7 people. The CEO position is open and will remain so in the foreseeable future, although it will be filled eventually. And they continue to be an important part of our special event lineup that we support very, very strongly. So probably the most important thing in my mind is that they are aggressively pursuing more corporate sponsorship for the event, because to be financially viable in the 21st century, there definitely needs to be more sponsorship dollars from outside this market than the constant demands on the hospitality industry here.
So, Mr. Frahe, this item is board member comments. Now, we can treat Mr. Baum's statement as more or less a board member comment, but if we have additional back and forth, our counsel is going to rein us in and say, whoa, outside open meeting law. Do you have additional items, sir?
No, that was the item I had. Any question?
Thank you very much. I apologize. Are there any other board member comments? Mr. Hull.
Thank you. We had quite a bit of discussion today about the strategic planning process, and I think it would be fruitful, perhaps useful to have some additional discussion at a subsequent meeting, whether that's next month or not. I think that's a planning issue for the staff, but I think it would be productive for us to have a discussion so that we all make sure that we're on the right track, and that's particularly important given the succession issue that council has raised. That kind of a turnover in a board can be it can be difficult for the board, and it can be very traumatic for staff, and I don't think I would want to see that happen to either side. So I think that would be useful. I think it would be productive to have a discussion, and from that discussion, then if there's a new course of direction that the board wants to take, then I think that's something that could be accomplished. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much. Are there, yes, sir, go ahead.
Is this item on next month agenda then or not?
Mr. Frahe, I'd be happy to return to item 9. That's appropriate if you have an item for next agenda for future board meetings.
The strategic plan that we have discussed, is that going to be on the agenda on the next meeting?
You know what, if you say it will, normally I would turn to staff and say, can you work something up? But this is of overarching concern. I think we can certainly place it on the agenda and get started. Is that fair enough, staff, Mr. Baum? So there's a yes. All right, thank you. That was items for future board meetings. We'll close that out. Once again, now board member comments. Once again, any other comments? Mr. Hawkins.
Considering discussion that happened about the strategy, maybe it would behoove staff to provide board members, especially new board members, what's been done so far as the strategic process.
Yes. And without discussing the item, that's important in two ways based on my comments. 2/3 of the board or more going off, all the electeds going off. 2014 is slipping away. We'll have those new people. They'll be good people, I'm sure, but we've got an obligation to take some action now. All right. No other items for board member comments. Let us close that out and go to concluding public comment. Do you have any requests to speak? And Ms. Brandhorst has already spoken. All right, we will close out public comment. That takes us to a favorite motion. Motion second to adjourn. Hearing no discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. All those opposed, please say no. We are adjourned. Thank you very much.